Sorry. It's a good thing I'm an IT director. So I'm Bill Hineline. I'm the Director of Application Performance Management at United. I think after seeing my title on stage today, I might have the longest title in the world. It really took up that entire screen, which was kind of entertaining. Before we get started today, Mike kind of talked about what we're going to chat about, but they would like me to give you a little bit of background for myself. So, you know, I've been in technology for about 25 years, and I've done, like a lot of you probably, a lot of different roles. I did desktop support. I did email administration and integration. I did Unix, and I'm a pretty big Unix bigot, I would guess I would classify myself as. And then I moved into IT operations leadership several years ago. I have 17 years in the airline industry. This week was my 10th year with United, so pretty excited about that. But I've also been at companies like NCR and Procter & Gamble, and I was with some other airline that we won't mention. You know, how I got into doing all this, I think, is I think because of this crazy level of curiosity that I've had and how things work, and I've always had that since I was a kid. And you know, AppDynamics was certainly, you know, the next awesome thing to pique that curiosity. But I remember, you know, I grew up in Ohio in the 70s, and my parents couldn't bring home a piece of electronics at the time without me coming at it with some sort of a butter knife and trying to open it and figure out how it worked. Now, the good news is most of the time it got back together. About 80% of the time it worked after that. And you know, only a few times did I nearly electrocute myself. The even better story behind all this is the reason I got into computers then is because I think my parents realized that buying me a personal computer at the time was cheaper than replacing cutlery. So that's kind of how I got into technology, as a kid, and you know, that curiosity has stayed with me. But enough about me. You know, I think that this morning in the keynote there was a lot of discussion about, you know, every company is becoming a technology company, and United has been referred to in many cases as a technology company with wings. We rely heavily on technology to run our airline, and to give you a little background on what our operation looks like, we're operating 4,600 flights a day. We fly with 1,200 aircraft. We go to 352 airports in 58 countries, and last year we flew 140 million customers. So getting technology right and keeping it up and running is paramount to everything we do, especially the 200 plus mission critical interconnected apps that we have. We also have two really big stakeholder groups. Obviously, our customers depend on the technology from the moment they walk into the terminal, actually from the moment they buy a ticket on United.com through the time that they go into the terminal, check in, board the airplane, maybe watch a movie on their personal device. To the time you pick up your bag and arrive at your final destination, that technology is really critical. It's also really critical to our employees in the front line and our flight attendants and pilots. The job they do to operate 4,600 flights a day, no matter what their job is, can't be done if they don't have the technology in front of it. The volume of work is just impossible. So really critical for that technology to be available. So before we had AppDynamics, you know, we were, like everybody else, really concerned with MTTR. We still are. But we wanted to get a little better at MTTR, and so we wanted to understand what was driving higher MTTR other than the obvious. We need to improve the stability of apps. So we started talking to MTTR in terms of different phases. Awareness, how long does it take us to become aware of the problem? How long does it take us to get the right people engaged? How long does it take those people to then diagnose the problem? And then how long does it take us to recover from that issue? So we did a lot of measurements there. Now, and that was back in January. So now as we look at MTTR, we have made some really significant improvement on that specifically diagnosed category. And on average, have made a reduction of about 44% in time, which is huge for us. In January, for a large environment where we had hundreds of web servers, and we had maybe one or two that were creating transaction problems and creating enough errors and intermittent errors for people, it took us a long time. We got into this thing I used to call server hokey pokey. You pull one server out of the VIP, reset it, check it, put it back in, and you do that 100 times. Well, even with some automation and a large group of people, that's no small task. It takes a long time, and you get to listen to people like me on the phone say, "Okay, are we done yet? How many more? How about now?" So a lot involved in doing that. Well, we've reduced that because with AppDynamics, we've been able to find the one or two or three servers that are throwing the errors, pull them out, and restore service right away. So big improvement since January. So I talk about all of this because we really require that technology to work all the time, and to say that AppD has helped us keep planes in the air is maybe a little bit melodramatic, I'll admit, but it's the truth, right? Those planes are dependent upon so many things, and I thought I'd focus in on one part of the business and share a quick video with you. It's about 6 minutes. It talks about our San Francisco maintenance base. And as you watch the video, you'll see that these airplanes have come in for something called a heavy maintenance visit. And as alarming as this may sound, they take the entire airplane apart. They take it all the parts and do an inventory of the part, repair things, replace things. And then keep in mind that they have to keep track of every part, have to keep track of how many cycles or takeoffs and landings that it's been through, how many times that part has been moved around. It has a shelf life. And then there's task cards. There is the scheduling system to schedule those aircraft in and out of the hangar. There's tons of technology that's relied on. And if it's not working, then that maintenance schedule slows down. And if that maintenance schedule slows down, there's an empty gate at an airport that next day waiting on an airplane, which means that that entire day of flying could potentially be delayed. And that's incredibly expensive. So with that, my lovely assistant, Matt, is going to help me out here.
We're here at United San Francisco Maintenance Center, where behind me there is a huge... Really? Do I have to say? It's a big metal bird. Get it? Name of the show. I'm here with Mark Eldred, who is the Managing Director of United San Francisco-based maintenance. Hi, Mark.
Hi, how are you?
I am fantastic.
Glad to hear.
Pretty big place you got here.
3 million square feet and 127 acres.
Just like my apartment.
Glad you got a big apartment. Obviously, you don't live in San Francisco.
No, I don't. So what happens here?
Well, heavy maintenance visits, which is what we're doing right here. We completely take the airplanes apart. We disassemble, we inspect it, we repair it if necessary, we put it back together, and then we test it.
Why? Why heavy maintenance visits?
So what we want to do is make sure that we maintain the highest level of safety of the aircraft. We want to be proactive with our maintenance as opposed to reactive. That way we can find the problems before they become a problem. We go down to the smallest aspect of the airplane and we check it to make sure that it's still good, and then we put everything back together.
A heavy maintenance visit often includes thousands of checks and procedures. Let's go through the list and learn more. Upon aircraft arrival at the facility, technicians perform power plant runs at idle and high power for performance data. During engine runs, interior pressure is increased to find leaks at doors or panels. Interior components such as passenger and crew seats, galleys, overhead bins, ceiling and sidewall panels, and carpet are removed. After exterior panel inspection, flight controls are lowered and prepped for exterior wash. Whew. Okay, maybe this process is a bit much for 30 seconds. Basically, every 4 to 6 years, a plane is taken apart as required. Everything is cleaned. They upgrade, fix, or replace everything that needs it. They put it back together, and when it leaves, it's as good as new.
It looks like the modulating span valve needs to move a little bit clockwise. Otherwise, doing a good job.
Well, thank you.
What is your job again that you're
I'm a
doing?
lead mechanic.
Lead mechanic. You love airplanes?
I do.
Like, what's this?
That's a clamp.
What's this?
It's a starter valve.
What's that?
That's a wire bundle.
Over here, we've got the sound system.
The bleed valves, actually. It makes noise.
Yeah, lots of it. What is this that I'm is this an engine?
This is the engine.
Okay. Should I just stick to hosting the show?
Sure.
Okay. All right, Mark, you've got a lot going on here. This place seems pretty cool, but it's not like you have like a sonic metal gun or something cool like that.
We actually do. Would you like to go see it? I'll
Yes.
take that as a yes.
Yes.
Let's go.
Let's go. Walk me through what just happened.
So what you just saw is an HVOF metal imparting gun. It is a high velocity oxygen fuel gun. What it does is applies tungsten carbide to metal parts and provides a better wear surface for it.
So when do I get to shoot it?
Never.
Oh.
So Katie, this is the engine shop, and we're coming into the assembly area. We start to put everything back together again, and I want you to meet Joanne. She's one of our experts in the area. Joanne, this is Katie.
Hi, Joanne.
Hi,
Nice
nice
to
to
meet
meet you too.
We got it from here, Mark. Let's let the
Got
ladies handle it. Thank you very much. Hi.
Hi, how you doing? Good.
So what do you do here?
I am the operating manager for engine maintenance, and I oversee all the overhaul of the engines.
How long have you been doing this for?
Almost 40 years.
40 years.
Almost 40 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I worked on the line. I've worked in cabin equipment, which is the interior of the aircraft. All the engine accessories, I worked there. And this has been my last stop.
This is the reassembly portion?
This is the assembly of our engines.
Okay.
So, and this engine right here is our finished product when the
Very
engine's done.
clean.
Yes, very clean. Everything has been reworked. Everything is cleaned up. And then we send them to the test cell.
You turn this on with 90,000 pounds of thrust somewhere on the ground.
Yes,
How do I get to that?
I think you need to talk with Mark.
It's nice meeting you, Joanne.
Nice meeting you too.
Mark!
You're not filming that, are you?
Pretty big engine you got back there.
That's a really big engine.
Okay, so why is that big engine in this big room?
Well, that big engine's here because we've disassembled it, we've inspected it, we've repaired it, we've reassembled it, now we're in the final testing stages. So we're going to take that thing up to full takeoff power. You want to come up and join us?
I would absolutely love to.
Come on, let's go. So Katie, I want you to meet Leighton. Leighton's going to be firing this up.
All right.
Fire it up, Leighton, let's go.
All right.
We're ready.
We're ready.
Oh, wow. Things are moving.
Everything's looking great.
So I think this is the part where I get to touch the throttle.
All righty. All right. You don't,
Wait, really?
you don't tell nobody, I won't say nothing.
I have never been this scared in my entire life. Wow.
Been great.
Am I? I'm so nervous. Where do I leave it? There? I flew a plane, guys. Flew a plane, and we all lived to talk about it. Thank you. That's it for another episode of Big Metal Bird. I'd like to thank Mark Aldrin and the whole staff here in San Francisco. It's a really exciting day. I had a lot of fun. And, you know, I got to fire a laser gun. Oh, now you shut it off? Thanks.
Which one is it here?
3.
So, those are a fun series of videos, and you can see them on hub.united.com if you're interested in seeing some of the others. They're kind of cool. But the reason for showing that was just, you see how complicated just one component of our business can be and how critical it is when things don't work. And really, AppDynamics helps us make sure that every one of the applications that we use in our tech ops space or the maintenance space is available for for the mechanics to use, so they can do all of the work that they have to do. I mean, thank God that I wasn't a kid taking apart an engine. We'd have a whole different conversation here today. So it's not, obviously, tech ops isn't the only big part of our story at United. There are others. There's certainly the airport experience, which you can all be, I'm sure, very familiar with. There's our customer care experience, our customer contact center experience. All those employees really rely on it. But let's not forget about that customer-facing, brand-impacting thing we all call an e-commerce website. And this is our latest version of United.com, released not too long ago. And it's a very complex environment that is indeed monitored by AppDynamics today. Here we go again. So, like many of these types of websites, United.com is really a UI with a really large set of back-end common services that support it, our mobile app, and a number of other things. And in 2016, we replaced a lot of the legacy tool sets that we had with AppDynamics to really understand the availability and performance much better. We also took the opportunity to start taking some use cases that we had to really understand how we could apply business IQ to the picture and help sell the issues. So we took things like the flight shopping and payment transactions and utilized both APM and business IQ. So before we get into the demo, I thought I'd share with you a little bit about the system that we're talking about. When you go to United.com, you have a number of payment options. You can use, of course, major credit cards. You can use PayPal. You can use mileage. So when you go to make those payment transactions, we have to have a system that really decides, how is that transaction going to be processed? And so that's what Payment Broker does. It kind of plays the traffic cop for all of those different types of transactions. Once it gets the response, it brings back that, and then it finishes the ticketing process. So we'll show you a little bit more about that list of processes in the demo. So with that, Matt's going to drive for me here a little bit. So what we have here is really a start of what we're working on at United. And for now, we're going to focus on the left side. We'll come back to the mobile agent platform side in just a moment. But what we have here is business IQ data combined with APM data. In this case, we're really starting with is business IQ data, and it's showing our United.com environment. Now, full disclosure, this is a test environment. This is not actual revenue numbers. But wanted to share just kind of the ideas with you. So at the top you see metrics, total revenue, total number of conversions. As we move down, you can see revenue and conversion performance as related to baseline. And you can see kind of that from an hourly perspective. And this works just like any other thing in AppDynamics. You choose a period of time and you can see what the performance is. But then we move down and look at the different revenue channels that we have. And we have 3 on here for now: United.com, the mobile app, and then our kiosk environment. And so right now, everything looks pretty good, pretty happy, according to our baselines, but suddenly something happens. Suddenly, we start to see some changes in color on the screen. Our revenue number, you still have the same revenue numbers, but we're starting to see conversion and revenue drop below baseline. And as we go down into the channel section again, we see that both revenue and conversions are having an issue. And so we want to dig deeper into that. So then we go to another dashboard, which is really more of an application owner dashboard.
It's my Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Matt's laptop is running the entire AppSphere domain and 3 Tesla cars, I think, from here. So again, you still have some of the same metrics that we started with up top to keep us informed of what those are. Total revenue, total conversions, and then the respective baselines. Still showing that revenue and conversions are having an issue. If we then look at the conversion funnel here and we go First, up and down, you see the different sections of the transaction that you might make while you're on United.com. You're searching for flights. You're reviewing those flight shopping results. You've different travel options to set. You pick your seat. You put in your billing info. We authorize that payment. And then we ticket you during confirmation. When you go left to right, you see the customers in the funnel, the percentage of change, and then we see abandonment rate. And then just past where it says, the different different phases, you start to see really the end of what is business IQ data, and then immediately next to it, you see the APM data start to show up. And so by looking at this, I notice that we have errors that are starting to appear in the authorization space. And my first inclination is likely, all right, well, I need to look into that because it's also probably affecting why I have fewer confirmations or fewer conversions. So let's dig into authorization.
We're getting there. I think my Wi-Fi is a little
Somebody play Rhapsody in
slow.
Blue.
Here we go.
There we go. So the first thing we see is at the top, they filtered out, and this is all business IQ data as well as APM data. Again, combined the same screen. At the top, we've got payment broker application chosen. We've chosen the specific authorization business transaction, and we're looking at the specific channel for United.com. So we see how much from a revenue perspective we've authorized in this period of time, how many transactions have been authorized, how many passengers have been booked, and their average response time. And then as I start to look through the other graphs, the one that really comes to mind comes to my attention first is probably the fact that we have this higher error rate in the lower left-hand corner. And that kind of correlates to when I started seeing APM or revenue impact from lower conversions. So I'm going to start looking at other things. I also noticed that maybe that system error list and the response code, and they're hard to see, but the first bar there is the successful authorizations, and the second one in this case, thank you, is a system error. So just by intuition, I'm going to make an educated guess, knowing what I know, that maybe I need to look into that. So maybe what I need to do is add a filter for the response code for a system error. And what this is going to do is show me only those transactions which have been impacted by that particular set of system errors. And in this case, it involves $85,000 in revenue, 260 transactions, 280 passengers, and they're all having around a little more than a second response time. That's all interesting, but then we get down to the graphs, and this first one here, we notice that, on the left side of the graph, we have normal sort of, decline rate levels and normal amount of assumed lost revenue because of the failed authorization. But then we have these huge spikes going on that kind of tie into that authorized number, which is actually the revenue loss that we were experiencing during that period of time. Then right below that, we again tie APM data into the same thing, and we see that the user experience trend is matching up with that. The response code, because we filtered on that, it doesn't give us a whole lot of interest, but right below that, where we have the error code, we see that the error codes are coming back as problem contacting the bank. In other words, as we're authorizing that transaction, the issuing bank isn't giving us the response we need, be it declined or approved or a number of others. So then we can look a little further and see that it's not all card types. It just happens to be one particular card type. And that really helps us narrow the problem. The first thing it helps us do is realize that in our command center, where we're managing critical incidents, We don't need a call of 150 people to get together to drill into a problem with our technology, but we do need to engage our business teams and the teams at maybe our card processing company to do some research if they're not already aware on why we're having this problem, because it could turn really ugly really quick. We also can tell things like, what are the things that are most affected by this set of transactions? In this case, most popular destinations and most popular origins. But we can also do things like capture mileage plus information and understand what level of mileage plus customers are these affecting? How is this affecting somebody who's a 1K? And how many 1Ks are affected there? Things like that. And maybe provide that to our partners in marketing to say, these people were trying to shop during a big fair sale. They didn't have a good experience. Go spend your marketing magic and see what we can do to convert those customers. So this is all, again, in our test environment, but what you see here is actual things we have in production today in United, and they've been very beneficial. And the use case here was really understanding when we have a downstream issue with payment card processing for some reason, understanding what that revenue impact is quickly, and understanding what trends and decline rates were. There have been situations where we've had business challenges that have created an increase in decline rates, for example, that wouldn't have shown up in any of APM data because it wasn't a technology issue, so to speak. There was a business problem that was driving that. So this is also a valuable dashboard for our business teams who manage credit card settlement and that sort of thing, and we're working with them to help us decide, or to help decide what would be interesting for them as well. Okay? So, as I think they covered pretty well this morning in the keynote, the simplicity or the ease of putting these things in is pretty high. We saw results in less than a week. We leveraged our existing APM plumbing, and I think that's an important thing to remind your business partners as they are maybe having to be pulled away from maybe competing analytics tools. You're not putting another agent in your environment. There isn't continued tagging and that sort of work to be done. You're using the existing plumbing that's in place with AppD today. One of the reasons that it was very easy for us to do this is we took some time to get the right people at the table. It wasn't my problem only to solve. I was certainly wanted to understand what revenue impact was when we were having these issues, but I also wanted to make sure that the business teams came in and helped decide what other metrics would be interesting, so we built a dashboard that's beneficial for us all. And doing that is allowing us to yield some powerful results. So when we started doing the pilot with the payment broker environment, it was with the intent that we wanted to see what kind of interest it generated across other business portfolios when we showed the ability to do this kind of work. And that interest is starting to trend up quickly. Just even before I left, I got some requests to talk about dashboards and brainstorm. But here are some that we're talking about now. We're talking about a flight operations dashboard for our business teams to understand where we stand at a moment's notice with all of the critical things that have to happen as an airplane's getting ready to depart, and summarizing that for the entire airline for, a period of time. We'd potentially like to trend data from the Inflight devices, or the devices that the Inflight crew or the flight attendants are using, to help us understand when we have a particular aircraft that's problematic with Wi-Fi, to help manage that, because that's a challenging set of data for us to capture. And then we also are talking about using this to measure usage patterns as we roll out new products. We are rolling out, I believe, another 15,000 iPhone 6 Pluses to the field for our customer service agents at the airports, so that when there's a regular operation and you're standing in what seems to be the longest line you've ever seen to get reaccommodated or get a voucher or understand what your options are, those agents can be deployed in that line and be walking through the airport and do all of that with their iPhone 6 Plus and a Bluetooth printer attached to their belt. So think, car rental experience. You return the car and they're doing all this on a mobile device. That's what we want to do in the airport. Provide you with a voucher or print a new boarding pass for you, or all of those things that you might be in line for. But building a device like that or building an application like that comes with its challenges, and adoption can be one of those. And so we wanted to build a dashboard, and we've got a mock-up here that Matt will flip back to kind of, to kind of talk to, and that's this mobile agent platform. The idea here is that maybe this is not a dashboard that we would build and use for the life of the application, but maybe one that we would use during the life cycle of the deployment and sometime after. And so in this case, again, if we now ignore the left side for United.com and look at the mobile agent platform, we see similar metrics. How many users are using it? How many, and we just picked a common transactions. How many reaccommodations are they doing? We could really do any number of the transactions they're doing. But and how are those performing to baseline? But then how is it looking in several of our hubs? And certainly we have more than 3 hubs, so we kept it simple for discussion purposes. But once again, something has occurred. And in Houston, it looks like our map users are down and the volume of reaccommodations are down. And so that would allow us to really dig in to understand what's driving the lower use in Houston. And this idea honestly came to me as Matt and I were filming the video that you saw this morning of us in the San Francisco airport. I was talking to agents about how they like the platform, and they were describing some of the challenges they have with nuances with Wi-Fi, and sometimes they have to do this, and sometimes they have to do that. And those stories really never make it back to IT quickly. But if we had a picture of suddenly a drop at a particular station or a drop on a particular day of the use of that, that's going to help us ask more questions. So it's really kind of where I got the inspiration to do that. And I think that's it for that one. So really, this whole thing that we've done, putting AppDynamics in from an APM perspective this year, I'm incredibly proud of the team, and they're here with the work that they've done. They've instrumented 108 apps since January of this year, and we're already doing some things with analytics, and they just keep jumping in, and maybe as they walk out my door, they're screaming 4-letter words in my face. But I doubt it. They're a fun group to work with. Bill's shaking his head. No, of course not. But, they've done a great job, and we've been able to do some amazing things because of it. And one of those now with using Business IQ is really connecting the dots, like we were talking about in the demo with the .com dashboards. Understanding that in an APM space where something may turn out just as a warning and a small health rule violation, putting that Business IQ component in there really helps us understand that while it may be only a warning and maybe only in a warning state and seem like a minor problem for us, business metrics tell us a completely different story. So a great combination of the two. It also, using that same tool, as we start to use the same tool across 2 different groups of people, techies and the business teams, we start to really become one team, and being able to do that because we're looking at the same data and yet have different data to interpret. We have our APM data, they have their business data, it's all coming from the same place, tells the same story, looking at the similar dashboards and being able to really get to the bottom of a problem easy. And it's real-time business awareness. When I talked about the team at United that's responsible for the recovery recovery or the credit card settlement, they used to have to wait, before we put these kind of decline rate reports in for them, they waited on reports like that and got them once a month. It's really hard to troubleshoot business problems when the data that you get is a month old. So when they saw this, they were really excited about the ability to be able to understand the impact of a new form of payment that we've chosen to accept. So. All right, so that's what I have for today. I'll take questions, but don't forget to give feedback. They're giving looks like an Amazon Echo away. So thank you for your participation. I know I kept you from cocktails probably, but any questions before we take off? Yes.
Guys, hang on. I'm going to give him the mic. Thank you.
What is the size of your APM team? How many team members do you have?
Can my entire APM team stand up? Whoop.
Sorry, what?
Hi, Bill.
Hi.
That was great. What does the 44% and reduced diagnosis time equate to?
I'm sorry.
What does that 44% and reduced diagnosis time actually equate to in dollars? Because at the beginning you had said that. If you can't say it, I understand.
Yeah, it's not something I could. I mean, first of all, that's probably not a dollar that I have computed in my head at this moment in time. Yeah, there is. I mean, I can't really speak to the specifics of that, but I can put it at a high level. You know, depending on the application, if I have an application that's down, and let's say our weight and balance system, right? If weight and balance is down for a period of time, and I have an aircraft sitting on the runway, there's this compounding snowball problem, right? Because I have an airplane sitting on the runway burning fuel. I have people that the longer the delay is are going to potentially misconnect. That means I might have to put them in a hotel. I might have to pay to ship their bags somewhere. You know, there's this long thing. And let's not forget about we have to make sure that we don't keep them on that airplane for more than 3 hours, God forbid, because then there's this small fine that we're going to get sent a bill from the Department of Transportation. And it's not cheap. It's $27,500 per passenger. So all of these, yeah, right? I mean, nobody wants to sign that check. So, I mean, I don't have a dollar amount, but I can tell you that internally we know what a flight delay costs, you know, and we normalize that across the fleet. And so this has been big. We had some discussions last Friday and invited the managing director of our flight dispatch team in to talk to, you know, hey, how do you feel like IT is doing? And he said that he feels like there is a very tangible difference in the reliability of the technology we provide them. And if that team in our dispatch organization isn't working, then these giant metal tubes aren't going anywhere. Sure.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think this is the message that we try to pass on is that MTTR is a great number, and I think what Bill is saying is that he's looking at MTTR and MTBA. So we talked a little bit about mean time to business awareness, and I think that's kind of what you're hinting from your question is that if you have an outage, where does that impact on the business? What is it? And I think this is where you're starting to see the dots being connected at United and their story. So yes, we are at step one, but Bill's got great plans. But this is where the new term, mean time to business awareness, comes into place because that's exactly what you want to know. If I improved MTTR, so what? Or if I didn't do it, so what? Right? Why do I need to even improve it? Why do I need to go beyond MTTR? Anyway, any other questions? Yes?
Thank you. How did you even begin to have the conversations with the business? Who started it? Did you start the conversations? Did they? And can you kind of describe the process that you developed to have the conversations in the first place, and maybe even a format for your meetings to have those conversations?
Sure, and I assume you're talking about the business IQ piece and not the APM.
Yeah, the actual conversations.
I mean, it started honestly back to curiosity and wanting to know how things work for me, right? And having seen a demo of analytic capabilities at the time, and knowing that that was going to be a thing. I had a business case that I'd been trying to solve for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. We had a lot of challenges in the payment broker environment where we would have, what we thought was a forest fire, which wound up being, just a really tiny problem. But because we didn't know the data behind it, to say that our revenue loss was way up here versus way down here, everything was a fire drill. And so that was a really close use case for me to start with, and then started attending the meetings where we're meeting with the payment processing company and our financial teams that manage that relationship and technology to really talk about kind of what's coming. And I started interjecting questions about decline rates and how do we know that these are successful and this was the right thing to do. And I think it's just being creative and having some insight yourself into the business, and then having some conversations, in my case, with our IT portfolio leads that work directly with our business partners every day. It honestly, you'll be surprised at when you talk about the capability and how easy it is, that the conversation becomes pretty natural pretty quickly.
Hey, Matt, do you have anything to add to this? Obviously, you've talked to many customers, the IT champions of AppSphere that are bringing business on the table. Do you have any perspective on this one from your side?
Yeah, I think I would just reiterate kind of what we talked about this morning, and this is really the approach that Bill and I took, was starting. So a lot of times I get questions from people, and they're like, where do we start? Right? Or there's a bunch of different ideas, and should we pick this app? Should we pick that app? I think what's been critical to our success is we pick something that was kind of readily understood. So pretty much everybody understands how payment broker works. It might have been different if we picked something that was deep into flight operations, right? And only that application owner had very specific KPIs that are very valuable, but not easily translatable to other parts of the business. Really what that's allowed us to do is help enable the brainstorming sessions from their end, right? Versus us having to go proactively understand what they're trying to do. It really helps to start with a couple of examples. Many times when I'm on, my capacity is typically more in a pre-sales role, where I help customers understand our capabilities, what kind of use cases do we have. And most of the time when I enter into opportunities, I tend to come with kind of a custom demo, just even based on what I know of someone's business, either from direct involvement, being a customer myself, or just learning about their business. And I tend not to go super deep in those demos. Right? I tend to build things that are pretty basic, and it really helps people kind of get the creative juices flowing, and then take that to the right people in the organization. So it really is a partnership, and just understanding, where does the pain come from? Mm-hmm. If we're not solving a problem where there's pain, and it's just more of a science project, I typically tend to see those not go anywhere, either from the IT perspective or from the business perspective.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. I think I'll just add a couple things from my side. When I've talked to customers, I think this is where we as a company need to help you, right? So we can help you have the conversation. Talk to the team that you have, that you work with from the AppD. Say, hey, really interested in it. Talk to the business person. Instead of you pitching it, let guys like Matt come there and pitch the idea, or work with them and whiteboard idea about what KPIs might be important. What's the best application that might suit for it, right? Let us help you through the process, and as the product gets, to the point where, a lot of the things become self-service from the mode, it's going to get easier and easier. But let us help you.
Yeah, and with this flight ops dashboard that we talked about, I was talking to the guy who wants to do that on Friday, and he says, "Can we do this?" And he's just brainstorming all of these ideas and all these metrics that he wants. I said, yeah, we can do all of that. But let's sit down and talk about what the problem is you're solving for. And let's straw man what that dashboard would look like, and talk about where that data comes from, and then just begin to talk through the process, because that gets that creative juices flowing.
Any other questions? Yeah? All right, I should have stayed back there. No, it's my problem.
Is there any way you can do what-if scenarios with analytics? Like, and I know you're using analytics and you're showing your revenue and stuff and the flow. Can you do what-ifs from historical data, or somehow, if we didn't fly this one plane, this is the revenue we would lose. If we shut down this server, then the performance is going to go up here, and this is going to cause another problem, and then we could lose more data. If we added more planes, I mean, can you use it for that type of situation? And how do you do it?
I don't know that you could do it to that. I mean, certainly some of the things you're talking about, if they were real-time happening, I mean, the server example you use, if I pull this server out of the environment, how much does my revenue improve? That's a doable scenario, right? You talk about something more complicated, like if I pull this plane out of service, that would be a little more complicated. I'll let Matt speak a little more to that.
Yeah, I think so. So I've been working in and around kind of analytics technologies for about the past 12 years, and there are some that have very specific product capabilities to, I open up a little template, I can kind of change the numbers and metrics. We don't really have that built into the product, but as Bill mentioned, there's oftentimes you can kind of interpret that data, either based on historical trends. All of the data that we have, so we looked through kind of the visualization layer today. If you guys remember back in the keynote, we have a query language behind the scenes as well. And something that we also didn't spotlight is we have a REST API to extract that data. So there could be opportunities either for integration with other tools that you have that have kind of built-in what-if scenarios. There could be things that we could interpret just based on historical trends. I mean, there's a lot of things we could do to probably help in those scenarios, but it may depend on the specific kind of thing that you want to extract out of the data.
So, one quick question. So, as an IT operations manager, what kind of data do you share with your, business teams, using the APM, so that United States competitive with your other competitors like Delta or something like that? I mean, what kind of data do you regularly, share with your business teams from the APM?
So from an APM perspective, we don't share a lot of that data yet. I mean, I think eventually we'll have dashboards that we'll publish for application availability and performance for portfolio owners. But I think if I put APM data up in front of a business leader, that might lead to confusion, because it's a matter of understanding and interpreting the data that they're looking at. But certainly our intent is to make, if we have great business IQ dashboards, of course we would publish those to the business teams. Al?
Hi, Bill. So I know you guys did a very thorough job on the APM side, incorporating events, et cetera, into your alerting system, so all of your IT owners understood when things were going wrong. What have you done in terms of thinking about incorporating this business data into proactive alerting as opposed to people watching dashboards?
Great question. So, I mean, just like at health rule violations that we have in the APM side, you have health rule violations that we could set in, say, the .com scenario, where our revenue drops below a certain number, or our conversion numbers drop below a certain number, and then those could be shared with your appropriate 24/7 teams. We do that today with APM, and we do that by sending that data to some of our legacy systems today, and we do that with the help of our partners at J9. But we take that data, and health rule violations go, and we made a lot of progress in operationalizing AppD that way, so that users are using it. And the same could be done whether you're talking APM data or the business IQ data.
Okay.
Answer your question.
Thanks, Bill and Matt. Thank you all for attending. Sorry we ran a little bit over, but please give them a hand.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.